Dun, 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 dun. Well, hello, whoever, wherever, whenever you are. Welcome. Denise Matteau here. Um, I'm gonna do a short rant. Then I'm gonna shut this down and come back with just stitching and no bitching. Okay. Greenland. Did you know that Greenland has been put under forced abortions by Denmark? Forced contraception. That's genocide. And if the United States is in charge, we don't do that. That is something everybody has to think about because the quilting community is being subjected to a liberal psychological operation by some, talk about colonialism, by some Americans who live in Greenland, but who are Democrat, liberal, Trump-hating, anti-American Democrats with their protest signs. Coming into the chats of the quilting community because having put up streams for a couple of years and building a community of people who just like to get along, building up friendship bonds, now all of a sudden the political gloves are off. Forced abortions, forced contraception, genocide. That is what the people of Greenland have been living under, with Denmark being in charge. And of course, it doesn't take more than half a heartbeat to realize that the liberal, left-wing, Bolshevik Democrats masquerading as if they're against colonialism when in fact they're living there in Greenland being colonial settlers, replacing the Greenland people with themselves while trying to make sure that Greenland goes under the control of another genocidal state, China. Those same people want to push forced abortion here in the United States. And you're saying, oh no, we never had forced abortions. BS. I happened to have gotten pregnant at an older age. What they call a surprise change of life baby. For personal, natural reasons, that pregnancy did not come to term because I was pregnant with twins and they simply did not survive. About a third of the way through the pregnancy, we realized there was no heartbeat. And a few days later, I had a natural miscarriage. But what happened in the course of the beginning of that pregnancy shocked me because my daughter was born in 1976. When normal people still ran the health, were doctors and nurses. But in the 1990s, when I went to the prenatal clinic, having taken the test and said, oops, I guess it's real, papers I was handed said, as the first choice when you show up and you get a positive pregnancy, termination by abortion. First choice. And when you say, no, I'm not signing these papers. I came here. It was the place where people went for full prenatal care, midwifery, obstetrics, everything that you need, a woman needs in pregnancy. It was not an abortion clinic. And all of the medical offices were handing women the same paperwork. forcing women to defend themselves if they wanted to actually give birth to that child, if they did not want to murder the child in the womb. And I won't go into all the other cases I know about, where young women are in fact forced into having abortions in the United States. And that's all a Democrat program. Now that we have a president and a Supreme Court that has returned the power of decision making to the states so that at least we could assert ourselves locally. If you want to live in a genocidal maniac state, you can move to New York or California, where locally they don't mind murdering babies in the womb, forcing young women who do want to raise their children to forego bringing that child into the world. Places like Texas, where the first thing we did before Trump got elected was when Governor Abbott stated that abortion clinics had to have full medical credentials. The doctors had to be licensed by the local hospitals, so that a woman going to an abortion clinic wasn't getting a backstreet abortion. Remember that? Some of you are old enough to remember that that's what the feminists did. They took all these horror stories of women visiting these backstreet clinics to get abortions in the old days when it was largely illegal. It was difficult for a woman to get an abortion, unless she was wealthy and went to certain clinics where it was done. But yeah, that was a problem. And the feminists ran the law to loosen up legality of abortions on the basis that women needed to be able to visit a real doctor when making that decision. And a lot of people supported that, and probably still do today. There are times when abortion is necessary, but it should be a last resort, and it should be done because it is medically necessary for the health of the mother, and not because of a matter of social convenience. The murder of children by these Democrat, liberal, woke, genocidal liars so please think twice. The quilting community is all kinds of people, and a lot of people don't like what I'm doing, speaking up the way I am. But I'm not sneaking into the chats with trying to identify whatever personal hardship I have or have had in my life to get people to move into, you're not a nice person if you don't agree with me politically, because I have a family hardship. No. If I want to talk politics, I sit on my own turf, and you can come or go as you please. And if I show up in the chat, I'm there for quilting. I'm there for the fellowship of the hobby. And if somebody really thinks the opposite of me politically, but we find ourselves getting along in chat rooms about quilts, fine. It's a free world. My opinion is strictly my opinion. I'm the crazy lady on the beach. I got all kinds of opinions. But I'm not going to exploit people's friendships and companionships and try to manipulate them by taking the chat room process into politics, going into other people's chat rooms that are not doing politics. Okay, I'm obviously doing politics. So you want to talk about it in my chat when I'm talking about it, fine. But when it's just sewing and just quilting and you disrespect that by identifying your personal family feelings with the politics, so that now everyone has to walk on eggs. If she's coming in here talking about a family hardship, do I express sympathy or not? Because I don't want to be dragged into taking sides in the Greenland debate. Because there are debates about these things, liberal ladies. Some of you are in such bubbles. We are all in bubbles. I mean, we think we know what's going on because we're watching YouTube, but we're always watching the same channels and talking about the same things that whatever we build our little interest bubble around, we don't see what's going on elsewhere. But no, you've got to look. I'm putting a clip, what do you call it? Not a clip, but a link. I'm pasting a link into the description of a news story out of France about how Denmark has been forcing abortions on the Greenlanders, genociding the population. You know that's not going to go on under Trump. Anyway, God bless some, have mercy on some, and to hell with the rest. I know I'm not supposed to rant. I swore I wasn't going to do this, but I feel like, you know, these people are sneaking in everywhere, and somebody has to call a spade a spade. Really. C'est la vie. Thank you for showing up. Hope I didn't give you a headache. I promise my next thing is going to be, I'm doing some stitching on this, and I've got another segment to put into my Cathedral Window series. And now that I finished my Groundhog's Day UFO, unfinished object, I've got to get started on another one. I've got to pick which one I'm going to finish. Okay. Thank you for showing up. Denise Matteau, over and out.